My job makes me drive a death trap of a van, so I enjoy a free steak dinner on the clock when it breaks. Here's what happened. Subscribe to Am I the Jerk on YouTube and hit the bell for notifications. This story is one of how a lowly delivery driver got to royally irk a dispatcher, waste his time, get 4 hours of overtime, meal paid for, and a free beer. So I was a driver for a little company that rhymes with Slamazon. I had been there for several months by this point and had developed a reputation about being very particular about vehicle maintenance. We aren't talking like washing them or whatnot, but cleaning out urine bottles, fixing broken wiper blades, installing lights to replace the burnt out ones, or other stuff that would indicate you actually remotely care for your driver's well-being. Seriously guys, I once had a van with no working lights of any kind and the passenger side door fell off its hinges right in front of my dispatchers. And they still sent me out. Needless to say, some trips were better than others. But this particular time, well, it was a doozy. You see, my friends, I was considered a problem driver by some for being obsessed with vehicles being kept road legal. I had not caused any issues other than this. We had dispatchers that were promoted up after a month, and after hitting mailboxes, cars, and other kinds of insanity. But I was always skipped over. This naturally irked me to no end, and I was looking for a better job within 6 months of starting. I was there for nearly 2 years. Naturally, all my requests for essential equipment and urine bottle removal were denied. So I'd buy bulbs for my van and pull them out after my route was done so I could put them into the next one the next day. I chucked urine bottles out on the record. Kinda gross, but better than smelling it in the hot Georgia sun in the middle of summer in a van with sometimes working AC. This nonsense continued for the entirety of my time there, of course. This event, however, was the first of many times I decided to get back at the dispatchers for messing with my routes and giving me the worst vans and so on. You see, this van had the lights that were bad, broken AC, shook like mad, squeaked, smelled like urine, and musty taco farts. The door didn't properly lock, so anybody could have stole packages from it and not much could be done about it. And to top this all off, 4 bad tires, like metal bands exposed and one bulging out in its death throes. The whole day I babied this van as best I could, putting air in the tire a few times and just barely finishing my route with some daylight to spare. So 10 hours on the road down and an hour and a half back to the distribution center. I get underway and get about halfway before I felt the telltale shake of a tire going out. Well, crap, here we go, I say to myself, and scan my surroundings. I'm on the interstate and not very far from an off-ramp. So with what little tire I have left, I limp off the road and to a parking lot which is next to an Applebee's. Perfect luck, all things considered. I call dispatch and give my exact location and tell them what happened. The conversation goes as thus. Hey, I got a flat tire over here at my location. What? How? Because you sent me out in a van that needed tires? Fine, whatever. Everyone has gone home, so you're gonna have to wait till I get there. Sure, that's fine. I'll stay clocked in then. Uh-huh. You finished your route, so I don't see why you'd be on the clock. Because I'm still in command of this vehicle, I have the keys, and if you want me to give it back, you're gonna keep me on the clock. I had called the company HR and explained everything before I called dispatch, and they ensured me that my time would be recorded. Fine. I have things to do tonight, so we gotta hurry up. In my mind, I'm thinking, perfect. Time to screw with this guy. After giving him extremely vague directions while I enjoy a steak meal and a large beer, on the clock and 0 F's given anymore, he finally finds it. I go out there and see that he's brought the smallest, saddest, most not suitable for the task jack in the center. I say, well, get to it. You made me leave with this van and you can change the tire. Nuh-uh, you were driving it and… I interject. Drivers are not allowed by company policy to perform repairs on the van. He had yelled at me previously for doing this with the bulbs. Only dispatch, management, maintenance, and the repair shop can repair the van. So I walk away to finish my meal while he tries to fix this flat with a jack barely able to lift the front of the vehicle, and needed bricks and other items to even go high enough. In total, I wasted 4 hours of his time, and cost him some personal time where he missed the game that he apparently had money on. I got my meal effectively for free with the hefty overtime I got that week. And as an extra smackdown, corporate came in and fired the manager, assistant manager, and this particular dispatcher for failure to maintain the vehicles to DOT standards, and for mismanaging the DSP, delivery service provider. After my lovely chat with HR during the incident, I showed them the text messages and some of the recorded audio I had taken of the dispatcher being a general jerk. A week later, and we had a temp management comprised of corporate operations that would oversee the vans getting replaced with less crappy ones, training new management, and of course giving training on what to do if you have a vehicle fail like that, along with granting drivers some maintenance permissions. Okay, we all know what company the original poster's talking about here, and we've all heard some horror stories of what their drivers have to go through. I'd like to think that that's not the general standard, but it seems like it might happen all too often. At least in this case, once he filed a proper complaint, things were taken care of accordingly. Upper management did come in and clear house of anyone that was a problem, that at least they saw as a problem. The fact that our original poster was essentially getting punished for making sure that they were safe on the job is borderline illegal. That's probably why they fired these guys, to avoid any kind of actual lawsuits. At the end of the day, it's up to the employer to make sure that their employees are safe, and that everything is up to standard. That clearly wasn't happening in this case. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. And if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out Easy Mode, also linked below. And don't forget to subscribe. My friend's dad was treated like dirt at a luxury car dealership. Now they end up washing his car every day. This isn't my story. It happened to my ex-classmate's dad, but it's too sweet of a story to not share. His dad is a pretty wealthy guy and owns his own construction business. My classmate always showed up in fancy clothes and cars. One day, Dad walks into a car dealership. He was interested in buying a Mercedes G-Wagon. He went inside and was ignored for almost an hour while other customers were treated. Eventually, a couple of salesmen approach him and ask him what he's doing here. He starts asking about the cars. The salesmen were very dismissive and sarcastic in response to him. It's clear that they aren't taking him seriously and begin to leave. Dad becomes irritated and asks what their problem was. They argue for a minute when the manager comes and tells him to leave. He had just come from work and was wearing slightly dirty jeans, boots, and a t-shirt. He's also a dark-skinned individual. Both of these factors probably made him look lower class in their eyes. Little did they know, a few weeks later, Dad ends up purchasing the car at another dealership. He negotiated free car washes for life as he traded in one of his luxury cars. Apparently, he was able to go to other dealerships in the area who authorized the same thing regarding car washes. He ends up going back to the first dealership and throwing the keys on the front counter, demanding a car wash. The same manager eventually came by to object, but he showed him all the paperwork. The manager looked a bit shocked and begrudgingly started the process. He's been going back almost every day for car washes. He always cheekily smiles at the staff members with a massive grin as a greeting, especially the two salesmen. They now just hang their heads in shame and walk away whenever they see him. Perfect example of don't judge a book by its cover. I would think car salesmen in particular should know this. Working retail and stuff, sure, you get people who walk in off the street and they're not exactly interested in what you're selling. But people don't walk into a car dealership without the intention of buying a car, or at least looking around and shopping for prices. It really doesn't matter what they're wearing. I know plenty of salesmen who would have jumped at the opportunity to help this guy. Cause a guy who comes in looking like this, you can tell what he does, and that it's probably his business if he's there. That salesman will turn around and sell them a whole fleet of new trucks for their business or something, and get massive commission on it. Whereas some other salesman would see the way this guy looks and walk away, missing out on a massive opportunity. My so-called friend bullied me for my disability, so I hatched a plan to get her suspended. I got very sick with what we now know as a life-threatening illness when I was 12. I was never great at making friends due to family issues, and so I had a small gathering of friends who I didn't realize weren't really my friends, and just kept me around to poke fun at. Because I was so ill and doctors were trying to figure out why, I missed a lot of school, and at first doctors didn't think I'd pull through. But after missing a decent amount of school, I got a bit more stable, and began getting tutored from home to make up for the work I'd missed. I worked my butt off so I could move into the next grade with all my friends. And it paid off. I made it. But when I was feeling well enough to be able to go back to school for a couple of days a week, I realized one of my so-called friends had began really tearing into my reputation at school. This girl, we'll call her Sarah, told everyone I was out because I was pregnant and had a contagious disease. Everyone in school was laughing and making fun of me. I was being called horrible things, and she even told me to just end it all myself. I was only 13. And it was very hard emotionally and physically for me to deal with all of this, especially after she began physically bullying me as well. When I told the school, they brought her in and we spoke together. It just made it worse. They started brushing me off when I'd come in and tell them she was getting worse, causing me to be more depressed than ever. After months of dealing with all of this, I heard about our annual class field trip. It was a glammed up version of camping. Heated cabins, carnival rides and equipment, a lake for boating, and even horse stables. It was the talk of the year, and everyone was going. It took weeks of begging my parents for them to agree I could go. The conditions were that I'd have to have the school nurse as my chaperone, and I could only stay one night, whereas everyone else stayed 2 nights and 3 days. I was so excited to finally be able to do something normal that didn't involve hospitals and tests and treatments. Everyone in school chose their groups quickly. My friend group filled their cabin, so Sarah and I were the odd ones out. We got placed in a cabin with a bunch of other girls who were also extras in their friend groups. I absolutely dreaded being in a cabin with her, but I did my best to enjoy my day at the camp before having to get into the cabin at night. Most of the girls were eating and sitting in front of the fireplace, just joking around, along with Sarah. Everyone was complaining about how this large group of popular girls got the boat cabin. The boat cabin was the best cabin, the only one with 2 stories and overlooking the lake. They had better beds, more room, a full kitchen, more showers, and a balcony. These popular girls had convinced the principal via their parents to let them stay there. Everyone was jealous. Right then and there, I formed my revenge plan on Sarah. I began to tell the other girls that we should totally prank those boat cabin girls. They all eagerly listened as I told them to grab rolls of toilet paper, baby soap one had brought for showering, and toothpaste. Sitting in front of this all, I told them that only one person should go so no one would see. Everyone fought over who would get to be the one to go and stick it to those boat cabin girls. Seeing as it was my idea, I suggested Sarah go. I hyped her up, telling her that she was the fastest in gym class and she'd be done quickly and quietly. The girls nodded in agreement. After waiting until it was early in the morning, around 2 a.m., we opened a window and sent Sarah on her way to the cabin with the supplies. She came back 30 minutes later. She boasted to everyone how it was her idea first and how she did it. She took credit for it, making it even better. They all played music and celebrated our accomplishment before going to bed. The next morning, the boat cabin girls were ticked. I have to give it to Sarah. She did an amazing job. I rushed to the boat cabin before my parents came to see what she'd done. The entire place was coated in damp, mushy toilet paper. It had rained a bit overnight. The toilet paper was stuck on the roof and deck and couldn't easily be taken off. It was gonna have to be scraped off. Some had flittered into bushes and the lakeside before it had rained, where it now sat in piles of mush. The door to the cabin had been unlocked, so on top of putting some toothpaste all over the porch, she had put some baby oil on all the doorknobs and floor inside. She put toothpaste on the girls' pillows as they slept so they'd roll into it. The girls from that cabin were livid. They all had to shower that morning to get the toothpaste out of their hair, some in cold water. Most had fallen upon getting out of bed, thanks to the baby soap on the tiled floor. They had to clean up the mess inside before even realizing the mess outside. Sarah was boasting about it, telling everyone from other cabins how she pranked those girls. People all sat in front of her as she told the story of how she did it all. I knew what was coming. I left early. My parents came to pick me up and I got in the car and left, sadly missing out on what would happen next. Before I left, I mentioned to a teacher that Sarah had done something bad the night before, and that she wouldn't listen to me when I told her to stay in the cabin. The next week in school, I heard Sarah got suspended. The camp owners were ticked and originally blamed the boat cabin for the mess before finding out it was Sarah. They forced her to clean the wet toilet paper and wash the floors and doorknobs. She cried the whole time and ended up getting suspended after the camp owners claimed she littered and caused chaos. Sarah tried to tell the school it was my fault, but they never had an issue with me before, so it was a bit unbelievable. Plus, she had already told everyone that she did it. The girls in my cabin that night kept their mouths shut about it being my idea. Whether they just forgot, weren't believed, didn't want to be involved, or didn't care, I don't know, but I was off the hook. Sarah called me angrily, and I told her I was done being bullied by her. Had she just left me alone, I never would have done all this. She stopped speaking to me and continued to bully me behind my back, but nowhere near to the degree she had been. There were times I felt bad about it all, but after the school did nothing to help when I was being picked on so severely, in my opinion, we're even. This sounds like a scene straight out of a 90s teen comedy or something. In all seriousness though, I don't know why anyone would believe the rumors this girl was originally spreading. Our original poster sounds like a fairly normal girl. To get pregnant at 12 and have a contagious disease is some pretty big stuff. I think it would be pretty obvious to most who hear that it's not true, and it really just shows more about Sarah than it does our original poster. The fact that she's willing to make up lies like this, for no apparent reason. To top it off, she used to be friends with you? That's just really gross behavior. I would think no one would want to be her friend at that point. Our original poster managed to have Sarah's desperation to be popular work for her. I had a feeling where this story was going, and that Sarah was going to try and take credit for everything that was done, not really thinking how that's going to affect her long term. I caught my supervisor shopping online while we were swamped with customers, so I made sure they wouldn't have any spare time going forward. This is actually from a few years ago, but I just remembered it and it made me laugh, so I wanted to share. I worked part-time for a few years in reservations for a large casino and resort. We were frequently short-staffed on any given day, leaving us deep in queue and some ticked-off customers once we got to them. It was very draining, and we had lots of turnover. 3 to 4 supervisors were present during each shift, in the middle of the room while workers surrounded the edges. During the day, we'd make trips up to their mid-floor open office to hand in forms, sign things, and things like that. They almost never jumped in the lines to help with the queue though, somehow always too busy to help. One day we were about 25 deep in the queue, and I go up to have them sign something. The supervisor doesn't see me approach, and I notice she's online shopping for shoes or something. She attempts to quickly change the window, but it was too late. Keep in mind, the supervisors could use the internet freely, but we workers weren't allowed to use the internet at all, even during slow times. I decide that it's just some bull to avoid helping with the queue, to online shop on the company clock, and to do something that workers weren't even allowed to do. So I figured out how to keep them all busy, permanently. We had these things called profile merge slips. Basically, when a customer would call in to make a reservation, you should check our customer database to see if they've stayed before, by name, by player's number, etc. But many wouldn't do this, or wouldn't do it correctly. Therefore, you'd end up having 12.5 profiles for the same actual customer. When we encountered these during our normal duties, we were supposed to fill out profile merge slips with the person's name, player number, and various profile numbers they had, highlighting what you believe to be the correct profile number, if you thought there was one. These were turned into the supervisors for them to correct within their database in their spare time, as we workers didn't have the ability or authority to actually make these edits or corrections within the database. You might normally turn 1 or 2 of these profile merge slips in each week. I decided to do these with every spare second I had, since we couldn't do much else. I systematically began going through the entire customer base, at least 20,000 profiles, beginning with the last names with the letter A. I easily made dozens of these profile merge slips each shift. My record was 104 in one shift. Each of these profile merges probably took 20 minutes each for the supervisor to review and implement the changes. Sometimes they'd come back to me with not sufficient info for merge. I didn't care. I knew this and I'd submit them anyways. Not my job. Nor did I have the database authority to figure out which one was actually correct, if any. As you might guess, this cut into their spare time free-for-all. So I do this for about 3 months, and they're incredibly backed up now. Each day, I'm getting the approved and denied profile merge slips in my inbox, for ones that I had submitted several weeks ago. As time passes, they get more and more behind. Here's the best part. We're suddenly given a policy change. We can now all use the internet on our spare time. Great. I know this was purposely directed towards how I was using my spare time. As in, it was never even a sincere thought before this to allow us unfettered access to the internet. Basically, they'd finally be allowing us the same rights they had, in an attempt to give me something preferable to do with my time instead of profile merge slips. Nope. I kept at it, though I did poke around Reddit here and there. I never stopped submitting those bad boys every chance I got. By the time I put my 2 weeks resignation in, they were 3 months behind in profile merge slips. It took months just to get through one letter of the alphabet. I had only gotten to the letter H. I left that place so happy, knowing that workers finally got to use the internet because their bosses didn't like doing extra work, and instead, they essentially lost their own ability to use their spare time on the web. Maybe you shouldn't have been shopping online while we were in the queue, jerk. This sounds like something I would do. I'm the person that needs to be kept busy at work. Otherwise, the clock just moves so slow. If I see that you guys are doing whatever the heck you want while everyone else is busting their butts, yeah, I'm probably gonna make some work for you too. I'm surprised the managers didn't come around to our original poster's desk asking why the heck they're doing all this. I guess they feel they can't really say anything. since the poster is cleaning everything up for them, or at least doing everything in their power to. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. Put the playlist on in the background to finish listening to all the stories. Or if you want some vibey music to put on in the background, check out Easy Mode. If you like Am I the Jerk, give Am I the Genius a shot. Everything linked in the description.